Welcome to episode 8 of Travelling Science. G'day legends, welcome back to Travelling Science, the podcast that's sharing science with the world. My name's Jesse Crow and I'm the Travelling Scientist, coming to you today from the Gold Coast in Australia. I'm a health science communicator, and on this podcast we interview researchers, doctors and experts, hearing their stories and sharing their ideas that can help us to live smarter, happier and healthier lives. Today's guest is Dr. Ana Pineda from a beautiful town called Alicante on the coast of Spain. Dr. Pineda worked in academia for years before deciding to make a change, and now she works as a productivity and writing coach for professionals who struggle with the ability to focus and write. Throughout our conversation, Ana talks us through things like how to stop spiraling with anxiety, how to prevent procrastination, how to meditate when you're too damn busy, how to build better habits, how to focus when you struggle with ADHD, and we'll go through a breathing exercise that'll help you to reduce stress. We also talk about things like introspection, task management, mindfulness, the Pomodoro technique, and 3 excellent book recommendations. Ana shares so many tips around focus and concentration, mindfulness and meditation, anxiety and ADHD, procrastination and productivity, and I'm super excited for you to get into it. But before we get started, I just want to quickly share a review of the podcast with you. And this week's review comes from Jock Alamani, who says, "New fave podcast. Just discovered this pot of science gold. It's like heaven for my ears. Jesse has the magic touch, finding superb guests and covering important topics. 5 out of 5 would recommend." Damn, Jock, I'm loving that review. Thank you so much. And if you're listening and you like the show, please take a moment right now to leave a review for Travelling Science. It helps the show, it makes me smile, and I could be reading out your review on next week's episode. Okay, are you ready to have your mind blown with incredible advice that's going to improve your life? Well, let's take a deep breath as we prepare for this week's episode with the one and only Dr. Ana Pineda. Ana Pineda, welcome to Travelling Science.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me here today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Just to get started, would you like to tell everybody what exactly did you study at university?
Yeah, so I studied biology. That was already a few years ago at the University of Alicante. So I wanted to actually be a marine biologist, but I didn't realize that actually I get very dizzy on the boats. So once we started the practicals, I would just puke every single time. So I thought this was some sort of sign, and maybe I should start exploring other disciplines.
Wow, so you couldn't do marine biology because you couldn't handle being on the boat?
Basically, yes. But I have to say that things sometimes come in unexpected ways. So at the same time, it was the first time that I took my first courses about insects and entomology, and I was fascinated with these little creatures. And then decided to also specialize on that. So even when it was biology, it was also a lot about insects and entomology.
Entomology is the study of insects. And if you're thinking, that's weird, why didn't they just call it insectology? Well, that would have been too darn easy, wouldn't it? See, the Greek word entomon means notched because insects, while they vary a lot, all seem to have segmented or notched bodies. Coincidentally, entomology sounds almost exactly like etymology, which is the science of word origins. And I'm not going to get into the etymology of etymology, but etymology and entomology aside, Ana went on to do a PhD in entomology, looking at how insects can be used to reduce the usage of pesticides in agriculture. And she also worked as a postdoc where she studied the microbes in our soils and how they impact crop growth. But she's here today to help us all with our own work. Wow, that sounds super interesting, Ana. It sounds like you've done a lot for the world of ecology and agriculture, but you're not doing that anymore, are you? You've moved on to start up your own company called iFocus and Write, which focuses on helping scientists, experts, doctors, researchers, things like that, to improve their concentration, their focus, and their writing skills. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how you started that?
Yes, of course. So I love science. I love being a scientist, but you might have heard it's a tough world and it's very competitive, very difficult to get a permanent position, especially at the time I was a postdoc in the Netherlands. It was really tough. And well, as many colleagues, there is this moment I call it the should I stay or should I go now? And well, I decided it was time to start something new. Well, that brought me through also traveling with my family, and I it started with me actually becoming a yoga teacher. So I always loved doing yoga, and not so much for the physical aspect, but for the mental aspect. So, and I always say that this is one of the things that really helped me to navigate these times of PhD and postdoc. And I always loved it. And I became a yoga teacher. And it was through that training I was doing. In the beginning, I thought maybe this is just for me, not to teach, but for me to have these skills. And at that time I was writing my last scientific article, and it was being very hard to write this last paper. And I started applying some of the things that I was learning during this teacher training, of more mindful practices, to my writing, to my routine, to my day, to try to focus better. And I loved it. It worked. It worked out. I finished the paper and I thought, well, actually, all this, it could be applied to help other scientists to write their papers. And that's how my first course was born, Mindful Scientific Writing course.
Dr. Panetta has a variety of courses and frameworks online that have been created specifically to help you with your own work. Examples include goal-setting workshops, breathing exercises, mindful writing courses, office yoga classes, a framework for planning around your menstrual cycle, and an online writing retreat to help you get some serious work done. You can find all of this and so much more at ifocusandwrite.com. I imagine that there's not a lot of scientists out there that are, doing research and then thinking, I should probably go do some yoga. I feel like that's not very common amongst the scientific community.
No, indeed. And actually, my first course, when I first did this course at my home university, so my PhD supervisor encouraged me a lot to do many things. She's called Maria Angeles Marcos Garcia. And she said, oh, Anna, I love this idea. Why don't we host it here at the University of Alicante? Just come give the course. And at that time, we call it Yoga and Scientific Writing. Some people were like, oh, this sounds so cool. But many people were like, well, I'm not really wanting to do some yoga and scientific writing. So there was a bit of a skepticism there. And then I thought, well, maybe it's also because often, like when we think yoga, we immediately start thinking on doing handstands and being upside down, right?
It can be quite intimidating. Some of the bigger, more intense poses that, look, no one can really do except for the top 1%.
Exactly. So that I realized that was creating a bit of confusion, because it was more the mindful aspect of yoga, the meditation aspect, the breathing practices, what I really wanted that everyone would implement into their daily life. So that's why from that I'm moving to mindful scientific writing. And it's still now, so we started in 2020, it's already 3 years. Still now there is people that come and take my course, and then they check. Now we do this online mainly. So we have this course online, and as part of the course they have yoga lessons and meditation audios. And still many people tell me, I haven't watched a single video of the yoga classes. And I'm like, what?
No, it sounds really cool. So I wonder if you have any suggestions for people that are listening in that might be thinking, this all sounds a bit crazy, like how can these things help me? I'm busy, I'm doing my own thing. What are some introductory techniques or ideas that you might share with people who are new to the whole idea of, improving their concentration?
Yes, because that's the thing, that they say we are actually getting worse and worse. Our ability to focus, the attention span of people are just decreasing every year, also due to the use of social media. So also out of that, I develop also another framework, is what I call the mindful productivity framework. And we sometimes say like, oh, I just want to focus, right? But there are a few things we also need to learn how to manage. So yes, the attention and how to focus is one thing, but we also need to understand things about ourselves. I always start with understanding you, like why you want to focus. Why is this important for you? And to connect really with that intrinsic motivation, with things like your values, because otherwise we lack that motivation, and the motivation is the big motor, to get things done.
So step one to improving your workflow is to take a moment and think about why it's important to you and what motivates you. Are you passionate about what you're doing, or are you just working for a paycheck? Or maybe you hate it. Take a moment to think about what is driving you and then move on to step two.
Then comes is what I say also, the project management, right? And this is something, a problem that people don't understand well, and it's that classical concept of project management. We have projects, but we also, inside the projects, we have tasks. And often we get a bit confused with that. For example, for my audience, a very common mistake is, today I'm going to work on my paper. And the problem is that work on your paper, that's a project. It's a big thing. You are not going to finish it today, probably.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming, exactly. So often we cannot focus because we want to work on something that is very overwhelming, and we need to learn to make that distinction between projects and tasks, and divide those things in little pieces that are, one, is not overwhelming anymore, and two, that we can finish that day or that session that you're going to be working on that task, but that you really start thinking, okay, what am I going to finish in this hour that I'm going to be working, so I can really cross it out. So that's the next step, and just with a little hint. There are more things, of course, in the framework, but these are just the basics to really start working there. After learning how to manage your projects, and especially having that distinction also with tasks, comes the time management. I love to ask my people, like, okay, why are you not focusing? What is your number one struggle? And it always is procrastination. And I don't know if this is something you're familiar with.
Yeah, huge problem. I used to not have a problem with it, and I was quite proud, but more recently, it's so easy to just get distracted. It's so easy to procrastinate nowadays.
We tend to think that procrastination is a time management problem, but it's not. It's a behavior regulation problem. So it's something with us, with our mindset, with our minds, and how we regulate our behaviors.
Yeah, it's a behavior, and behaviors, what a lot of people don't realize, are we can change our behaviors. It's kind of a learnt program that our brain just sort of does. We've taught ourselves how to do it. We can also unteach ourselves, or perhaps replace it with a better behavior, right?
Love that. Yes. So this is something I always say to my students. I say, so it's learned, which means can be unlearned. And yeah, this is just magical. And actually, when you put some things into place, you can see the improvement in yourself. Some of my students came and tell me like, oh, I thought this was the new me. I thought this is me and I need to learn how to work with this new me. And then they see they can go back to their old them where they could focus. And for that, something that I'm a big fan, and if someone listening to this doesn't use it, struggles to procrastination, I want to encourage everyone to try the Pomodoro technique.
So the Pomodoro technique is a time management method which is centuries old. Not really. It was invented in the late 1980s by a gentleman named Francesco Ciriolo, who used a kitchen timer in the shape of a tomato to help him get his work done. And the Italian word for tomato is Pomodoro. So if you want to stop procrastination and get some serious work done, try this tomato technique. Set a timer for 25 minutes and just work during that time. Do whatever you can and don't let yourself get distracted, just for 25 minutes. Then when that time is up, take a 5-minute break and repeat. Do this 4 times over and you will have done almost 2 hours of solid work. But make sure you use those 5-minute breaks wisely.
The idea is that those 5-minute breaks, they should also be mindful breaks. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna now check my email or check my phone or make this call. No, let's try to make it mindful. And I say I love to walk outside, out of my door if there is a bit of sun, just staying there in the sun, or doing some stretches, a bit of yoga, something that you really calm down that nervous system and you give a rest to your mind.
So is a definition for a mindful break, is that trying to focus on the present as opposed to getting distracted by something, thinking about the past or the future? Is that a key point, to focus on the present, where you are and what you're doing?
Yes, love it. Yes, so being mindful is being present on whatever you're doing. So and this is a challenge, right? Because we have they call it these monkey minds, that are all the time they're like thinking, oh, what we need to do after this, or oh, I should have done this, I should have said this, and staying in the present is really tough unless we really practice it. And that's what we do when we practice mindfulness, when we practice meditation. But sometimes even like some people tell me, oh no, I'm in that state when I'm running or when I'm swimming. I'm really in the present. That's great. Then do that. But let's try to do that mindfully.
You mentioned before about how procrastination can be associated with anxiety. I know anxiety is very common in a lot of people around the world. It's becoming more common. Do you have any key tips for people who might be struggling with anxiety?
Yeah, well, here, big disclaimer, I'm not a doctor, and I think that people that suffers from anxiety, especially regularly, should go to a psychologist, therapist, some professional on the topic. What I can share is what I do. And for this, it has really helped me also to apply the mindful approach that I always apply to actually everything I do and that I share always. And is to work on 3 steps. And the first is awareness. Identify, why am I anxious? What is it? And then really give it a thought, talk about it, see what it is. If there is a name it. And for example, I will share it because we are here live. It's very meta example. Before an interview like today or a class, webinar, public speaking, I get anxious. I think most people do, right? At different levels.
Yeah, no, I get that too. Yeah, absolutely. I was anxious before, so I feel great now, but here we are.
Speaking with my bosses who are professors with lots of years of experience teaching classes, hundreds, thousands of hours of class, conference, etc., they told me they still feel nervous before a little bit, and it's a good thing, right? But I feel it hours before, and what happens in days like this is that I would procrastinate on other things those mornings. Like this morning I've been procrastinating big time, but now I know I have this thing coming in, and that makes me a bit anxious. So I don't overthink too much. I know this is it, and I know I put a name. I'm anxious because this is happening, and I know what it is. So that awareness helps. Then another thing that often happens that we see that triggers that anxiety are fears. And for example, we see it a lot with writing. I work with people, I help them to write. And writing triggers a lot of fears, especially when we are coming towards the end. And it's the fear of being judged, because when you're writing something, you're going to send it to your co-authors, or you're going to publish it somewhere. Maybe it's even social media, right? You're going to post it out there, and people might judge you, and this triggers a lot of fears.
I get a little bit anxious every time I'm about to post something on Instagram. You can't help but think, is this right? Have I worded it right? And that can be a source for a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yes, so that's that fear, that fear of judgment, of being judged, of failing, of saying something that is wrong, of we have also fear of disappointing people. So there is a lot of fear coming up also on moments when you are going to be exposed, let's say. So also identify in those moments, like, why I have this anxiety. Well, you can say, oh, it's because of this fear. So again, that was another example of that first step of awareness. Then comes the second step, and the second step is the arguing back, the argumentation. And this, especially, of course, I work with scientists. We like this argumentation, right? We need to be convinced, and this is something I always say. Like, we want to have evidence that we're capable, evidence that everything is going to be fine, evidence that you are a capable person of putting a piece of text out there that has no mistakes, or mistakes that are small mistakes, and you need to be convinced of that, and of course, for that we need to just have a conversation with ourselves, because often we are very critical with ourselves. We are our worst critics, actually, and this positive conversation needs to happen. That's the second step.
So if you're feeling anxious about something like a Tinder date or sending an awkward text message or even using a public bathroom, just take a moment and think about why it makes you anxious. Then come up with a counter argument. Maybe your Tinder date is a horrible person, but they could also be the love of your life, or at least decent in bed. Maybe your text message will make someone unhappy, but it still needs to be sent. And maybe the public toilets are gross, but who gives a crap? Well, you do, and that's why you're in this predicament. But once you have these positive conversations with yourself, you can move on to the next step.
Keep moving. So take action. So whatever it is that is stopping you, and we can go back to the example of procrastination. Imagine you need to write an Instagram post, in your case, or a paper for many of my scientists, and they are finishing and they start procrastinating and procrastinating because of this fear. They know it's a fear. They talk about themselves, and the next thing is just do it despite the fear. Put the Pomodoro, block internet, go somewhere where you are not distracted, and write and post it. Because when we stop there, when we let that fear stop us, we kind of feeding our thoughts of, you see, you are not capable of doing it, because you didn't do it. So we need to keep taking action, and I'm a big fan of imperfect actions, and keep moving. And for the procrastination, that's why I love also Pomodoros. You say, okay, I don't want to write, I have all these fears, this has been terrible, but I'm going to put an alarm, and at least for 25 minutes or 10 or 15, whatever it is, I'm going to just write. And often what we see is that after 10, 15 minutes, you are on the momentum, you got your groove, and you will just continue.
That's awesome, Anna. Thank you so much for sharing that. If I may summarize, a great technique for dealing with anxiety is to, 1, stop and think about what's causing the anxiety. 2, make a counter argument as to why that might be a ridiculous reason and why that shouldn't make you anxious. And step 3 is to not get paralyzed by that anxiety and just push through it. And don't succumb to analysis paralysis, but to actually keep on going and just fight it. That sounds like a great way to deal with anxiety.
Of course, when we say like this, it sounds easy. I know it's not easy. And sometimes it's really tough to come out of that spiral. And that's also when maybe in between these techniques, as part of maybe between the second and the third step, having a mindful practice or whatever you do that will calm down your nervous system. So you signal your nervous system, you signal safety and calmness it down. That can help. And I love this example. Like if you are in an anxious mood and I tell you, calm down, you will be, I cannot calm down, right? We don't calm down because someone tells you or you want to calm down. But a very straightforward technique, for example, is working with our body.
Working with our body means using physical action to calm yourself down, whether it's going for a walk or doing some stretching or even just taking a deep breath. So now Anna is going to walk us through a quick breathing exercise, and I encourage you to try it. Whatever you're doing right now, just take a moment and join in for this. You ready? All right.
Let's inhale deeply and try to open your rib cage and open your belly. And then slowly exhale. And while you exhale, just pay attention to the air coming out of your mouth. And just kind of try to release the tension on your muscles. And that's just that. you might already feel it. Maybe you need to do more rounds.
Yeah, wow, that's a good point. Is that even just one breath, sometimes just taking one mindful breath like that can have a huge impact.
Exactly. So this is what I want that people realize, that it's not like, oh, I don't have time to meditate because I don't have time to sit in somewhere quiet for 20 minutes. Well, then just do a few mindful breaths like this, eh? Or any other technique that working with your body will calm down the nervous system. So there are also other like yoga poses and so that calm down the nervous system. But whatever works with you, or being in nature, things like having a hug, the sensation when you get a hug, or I don't know if you have tried these heavy blankets.
Yeah, I my mum has one, and it was just on the back of the couch, so I put it on one day, and I thought it's really heavy, but I kind of like it.
Yes, because it calms down your nervous system too. So there are a lot of these little things that can calm down that nervous system, and that's what you want to feel less anxious.
I love all these different simple tips, ideas, and techniques that you're suggesting that can help just almost instantly improve our mental state. And I feel like for each individual, you probably know, or if you don't, you can find out what will help you as an individual by doing that introspection we talked about earlier, sort of really stopping and thinking about yourself as an individual.
I love that because this is something that I keep always speaking about, that I can share whatever strategies I want. In the end, it's you who needs to see what works for you. And I see this over and over. Like I said, I've worked already with hundreds of scientists. Eh? And like Pomodoro, some people tell me, oh no, doesn't work for me. Other people, they love it. Other people tweak it with the timing. Okay, like sometimes they do 25 minutes, sometimes they do 50. Other people tell me, oh, for me it works very well in the morning. In the afternoon, don't give me pomodoros. So it's so dependent on the person. So what I like is to share a lot of strategies, and I would like to encourage everyone to try different techniques, tool, tips that you read in Instagram or podcasts like your podcast, Jesse, and just try them out. Try out these techniques and then find yours, find the ones that work for you. This is in the end because we are all different, and no productivity guru is gonna in the end have the magic bullet on what you need to do.
Absolutely. Now that totally makes sense. And one thing I would like to point out is that your company, I Focus and Write, is mainly targeted towards scientists, but I imagine that most of these strategies would help any sort of professional or just about anybody at all. They're not just exclusively for scientists and science-minded people. These ideas can really help anybody.
Totally, it applies to any person doing any type of job, not just scientists.
Do you have any book recommendations for people that might be interested in this sort of mindfulness idea, or any book recommendations for someone looking to improve their concentration or writing skills in some way?
It depends, what they are looking for. For example, for focus, I love the book of Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's fascinating. He talks about deep work, which is this difficult work that many of us need to do, scientists definitely, but many other professions, the type of work that actually cannot really be replaced by machines or robots. Is that kind of hard work. Writing is one of those. That kind of work that you procrastinate about, that is hard, that requires some thinking, and how we should protect that deep work, nurture it, and kind of honor it, because it's in the end what will make us thrive in the world, in society. So that one was very inspiring. There is the book of Atomic Habits.
Really good techniques for how we can basically break down bad habits and build up good ones. There's some really good information in that book. I love that one.
And then on another aspect, and especially it's not just for women, although most of her readership are women, is the book of called Do Less by Kate Northrup. And she has been for me a big inspiration, and also on another pillar of my mindful productivity, which is energy management. So you need to manage yourself, you need to manage your time, your projects, and you need to manage your energy. And this book has been super inspiring on how to work with your energy and cyclical planning. And I love that book too. So that will be my top three in terms of productivity.
Very cool. Thank you so much for those book recommendations. I've got a few more questions. I have one more here and then a few listener questions. Do you have any daily rituals that you yourself swear by? Things you do every single day?
I have a confession to do, and it's that I'm terrible at daily rituals. I don't know. I think it's something about the personality. So I can get very obsessed with something, and then for a while, for a period, that's my ritual. And then life happens, and I fall out of my ritual until I build new ones. But definitely, I have some sort of mindful practice daily. For example, meditation. That is my constant meditation, or sort of a mindful practice, even if it's 5 minutes when I wake up in bed, or 2 minutes during my work while I do pomodoros. Or definitely now, for example, I try to do, because I work a lot at home with a computer, I like to close my day with a mindful walk. So I like to go to a park or the forest, something in the city, and just do a walk. And I try to do that mindfully, at least for a few minutes. And that is paying attention to your body, how it moves, to what you see, what you smell, what you hear. And actually, also, these mindful walks is a strategy that I also recommend, not just for productivity, but also when people feel blocked with some ideas and they need some new ideas, some creativity boost. These mindful walks are just magical.
I know it's super common for people to go for a walk or a run and they're always listening to music or a podcast, which is great. But sometimes you just need to go and listen to nothing and just be with your thoughts. So you can I've had some of my best ideas when I'm out for a walk. Oh, fantastic, Anna. Thank you so much for answering all those questions. I do have a few listener questions for you, if you would be ready to answer those. But before that, each week here on Traveling Science, we make a donation to a charity of the guest choosing. And this week, Dr. Ana Pineda has chosen to donate to Open Arms, a foundation that rescues people who are lost at sea, fleeing from war, poverty, and persecution. So a donation has been made to Open Arms on behalf of Dr. Ana Pineda, and if you'd like to make a donation to them as well, you certainly can. Or if you'd like to support Traveling Science and the charities that we donate to every single week, you can certainly do that too. And in both cases, the links are in the show notes just below. Now, back to Traveling Science. The first listener question comes from Crashy Apples, and she wants to know if you have any advice that can help people with ADHD to focus.
Yes, so actually there is quite some people that come to me with ADHD because of course focus is a big struggle. So more than anything, the first thing is trying what works for you. Careful with the general advice on productivity, maybe even careful with the things I've shared, because it might not apply. And then the next thing also is to work with that energy, really checking with your energy and the energy that you have, because going against our energy is hard for everyone, but if you have ADHD, it can be extra hard. And just readapting what you need to do to the energy you have. And then the third one that also people this is based on what people share with me, is this breaking things down. When we spoke about having a too overwhelming task and breaking it down in little pieces until it's unavoidable to not start working. If maybe that is just write one sentence and just trying to go from that.
I love that. Those are some really great ideas for dealing with ADHD. Eleanor the scientist was wondering if you could recommend the best technique to stop somebody from spiraling.
In negative thoughts, that comes very in related to the anxiety that we have been talking. So actually, all what we spoke about dealing with anxiety is what I would recommend. And especially if these thoughts are really spiraling, we might be in that situation when arguing back and speaking with ourselves is not helping. So then I would go into the moving your body, working with your body, and trying to gather that power that our bodies have to regulate our nervous system.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And Jimmy C would like to know, and you might have touched on this already, how would you find time to meditate or do breath work if you're just too busy?
Yeah, so this is the thing. Changing the mindset that you need 20 minutes to do that. You can do it for 1 minute. We didn't get too much into deep, but one of the biggest advices I got from that book of Atomic Habits is that when you want to build a new habit, the best way is to stack it on top of an existing habit. So something that you already do, for example, like I say, I wake up and I like to stay in bed breathing deeply, meditating for 5 minutes before I'm gonna start my day. Like this is something you already do, right? You wake up out of the bed. Or for example, after lunch, I'm gonna sit and rest and do some deep breathing for 5 minutes. So just stacking those little habits.
No, I love that. I know one of the first things I do every morning is have a cup of tea. And so what I started doing was once I make the tea, it's too hot to drink. So I'll meditate for 5 or 10 minutes until the tea is ready to drink. Like I'm going to drink tea every morning. I've been doing that for as long as I can remember. But bringing meditation into that has been super beneficial.
Oh, I love to hear that. I love it. And for that, also for the people that is interested on trying and working with meditation, I always say like make it easy for yourself and for some people just meditating on your own might be difficult, and I always recommend there is this app called Insight Timer, which is free and it has thousands of meditations. So I always say everyone should have it in their phone, and you can find a meditation just searching for a topic you feel you need, or some of their free courses they have that are excellent. Sometimes you will listen, some people, and I sometimes have that, I need to be listening to a voice to enter into that calm state. So for if anyone feels that way, that app can help.
Thank you so much for answering those listener questions. And if it's okay with you, we'd like to finish off with the lightning round.
Okay, yes, I would love that.
Question number 1, what do you think is the most efficient practice for somebody who is stressed? What would you recommend?
Dance.
Dance. I like that. Cool. If you could do something completely different with your life, what do you think you would do?
I always had these plan Bs, like having a nice coffee shop where we would like also, we would make nice coffees and nice cakes. Then I've also had plans of having a artisan bakery, or I would love to be food critic and be that my job would be just to eat in amazing restaurants every day. So all related to food, basically.
Sounds incredible. Food is a big part of life. I love that. What do you love most about science?
The people. I sometimes say I love science, but what I truly love are scientists. I love the people. I love the people I work with all the time.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. What do you hate about science? What's the worst part?
Ooh, the system. So the academic scientific system where you need to publish, you may have heard the publish or perish. There's a lot of pressure to publish. And in the end, it was a system that it wasn't designed for people like, even like me, despite all my privilege, right? But women in science are having a hard time, not mentioning any other type of gender, race, religion, type of diversity. So yeah, the system is what I hate the most.
Yes, it often seems broken. What is your favorite yoga pose?
Ooh, child pose. You are on your knees and just stretching there like while relaxing.
Super comfortable. I love that. And last question, what's your favorite style of meditation?
Honestly, I don't really know much about the differences about the styles, but I would say my favorite is a guided meditation where I'm listening to a voice and that is driving me through a specific topic, and then I search the topics based on how I feel and what I need at that moment.
Right, that's really nice to hear because I know a lot of people can struggle with meditation where you're just supposed to sit in silence for 30 minutes. It can be challenging.
No, that's very tough. Yes.
Fantastic, Anna. Well, thank you so much. You have done incredible work helping many people around the world improve their focus and their concentration and their writing skills, and we absolutely appreciate that. And thank you so much for coming on Traveling Science today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I'll just finish with one final question. Considering everything that we've discussed here today, what do you think is the number one piece of advice that you would give to listeners that they can take home and act on to help improve their lives in some way?
Just breathe, really, like in a mindful way. Like we just did this little exercise. So focus more on this deep breathing throughout your day since you wake up till you go to bed, and your life will improve. I can promise you, because we forget how to breathe. And when we do it properly, we can calm down our nervous system. And when we calm down that nervous system, we're more productive, we sleep better, everything gets better.
So there you have it, legends. That was ecological expert turned productivity coach, Dr. Ana Pineda. She had so much valuable advice for us, and I just want to go through and highlight some of my favorite tips that she shared with us today. Like mindful walks. Sometimes if you're stuck or a bit lost, just go for a walk, preferably in nature, but it can be around your block or even through the city. But don't listen to music or a podcast. Just be mindful. Look around you, listen to the sounds, breathe in the air. This is a way of getting out of your head and back into reality. And I think it's a great way of hitting the reset button whenever you're feeling stressed or confused. Another one is a mindful breath, and you can do this anywhere, at any time, quickly and quietly. Just take a deep breath in and breathe out, and focus on the air that's flowing in and out of your body. This will help you to relax, no matter what your situation. And these techniques aren't just cheap tricks, they're proven by science to relax your nervous system, to reduce stress levels and promote a sense of calmness, which isn't only going to help your focus and your work, but if you practice them regularly, they can improve your life in so many ways. So if you want to learn more from Ana, you can find her at ifocusandwrite.com, where she shares a mindful approach to academic writing and productivity. She regularly sends out motivational emails. She has a bunch of free masterclasses and online programs that can help you to feel like you're at a writing retreat. And you can also find her on Twitter and Instagram by searching for Ana Pineda, spelled Anapineda. Finally, if you stick around to the end of the episode, I always leave you with a little secret. And this week's secret is that yesterday I went and saw the Barbie movie. And it didn't suck. Do I love Barbie? Not really, but I do like Margot Robbie, and yeah, that movie was decent. Anyway, thanks so much for listening, legends. I'll catch you next Science Sunday. Cheers.